Alright. I think I got the volume sorted tonight. Welcome to the show, 9:41 on the clock, a little bit later tonight. Jupiter and Saturn have already set. We've got a gorgeous moon in play, 68% waxing gibbous. Got a little chill in the air. We got some crispy views. Let me know if you hit that, if you're hearing the audio okay. Like last night it was a little bit low, but I figured out how to raise it. So music and voice should be even now. Going at the top, NGC, what's happening? You're first. Kimmy, nice to see you. Rastaman lives, what's happening? Mary Quite, Taco, Luna Taco. Ellie Wynn, good to see you. Glad you made it tonight. Cactus Dance, hell yeah. Genghis Khan, what's happening? Lost Brooklyn. And everybody showing up. So yeah, it's going to be a fun show tonight. Give me that thumbs up if you, in the chat, if I sound okay and it's clear. Definitely hit that 4K and share the stream with whoever you'd like. A little bit rough on the throat tonight. I think I was talking a lot yesterday and pretty loudly as well, but I'm happy to talk a bit more about electric universe principles, or a lot more. So if you have any questions from yesterday or any new thoughts, we could do some sketching. We're going to look at some pictures tonight, look at hexagonal craters, conjugate geometry, plasma layers being memory outside the body. But most of all, we're going to chill and listen to some good tunes. What's up, Jedi Princess and Cyber Sully? What's happening? And taking your requests as well. all right. That was No We Can Survive. What's up, everybody joining now? A couple more tunes while we warm up. Just chilling here with y'all. It's feeling good. Crispy skies. Get to be with our moon yet again. What should we play next? Let's do some Mutual Masses coming up right here. Drift away, and we come inside and you drift away, when the moon is riding through. Come, let's drift away. Yes, you're the queen of the night, and so All right. So let's do a little quick tour of the moon. Like I said, the planets have already set, so it's just us and the moon tonight, and Mars is way overhead. I might try for it before the end of the stream, but I'd have to use a diagonal to point the scope almost vertically to get it. But soon we'll be able to see Mars as it comes a little bit closer to the ecliptic that we can see. What's up, San Diego, and everybody else joining, and the lurkers as well. Hope you all are feeling great tonight. Let me get my sketch pad up and just highlight some of the main areas that we can see tonight. Please ask questions and or ask me to zoom in on a certain area. Right now I got the Nexstar 8-inch telescope with the Sony a6-500. Running 4K, 30 FPS right now. And it's just on the brink of like saying green, so that's good. Maybe in the next couple of years we'll be able to really push that 4K 60 frames per second and even less noise, and it will be even better. But this is pretty great. Zoomage on the moonage, hells yeah. Alright, so paint program, pull that up. There we go, sketchy sketch. First up, right here, Sea of Serenity. Coming in, nice pentagon. You got Sea of Tranquility. I could just draw the hexagon and then I'll show you the breakage on it. But that's the first interlocking shape. You got Proclus right there, Astrid. You got hexagonal, Mare Crisium. You've got, where are we? Mare Fecunditatis down here. Sea of Fertility. You got Langrenus Crater at the bottom. You got Mare Humorum or Nectaris right here. Let me just double check that. Where's my atlas? That is Mare Nectaris. Sea of Nectar. Oops. Of course I'm going to start dropping stuff. That's how it goes. Pull up my paint. Alright, so where were we? Going back to here. Mare Nectaris, Sea of Nectar. Kind of nested hexagon. A little bit diffuse at the edges. What other things can we see that are just apparent? Right here at the top, let me readjust the moon a little bit. You'll see that Mare Imbrium is just starting to appear. We're at 68% illuminated, so a bit more than half. We can kind of see the Apennine mountain range come into play as well. And right now I have it set so that we can see the entire surface, but I could probably turn up the settings to see the Apennine range a little bit better. I'll do that momentarily. But here, Mare Imbrium, much larger hexagonal shape. And you got kind of a structural, the angle of a platonic right here with a point that almost looks like Proclus. I sketched this out yesterday, but it has that same kind of three rayed structure. And I want to find the name of that feature so that we can log it. So what is that? It's above. So interesting, on the atlas it looks so different. So if I follow Hercules, Posidonius all the way, it seems it's around this area called Messala, Berzelius, but I can't tell exactly what that rayed structure is. But either way, right around that area, and then Proclus down here. It seems like there's this interesting, like, connected filament that goes around like that, almost connecting these two. I would bet that there's some more interesting geometry down here. Mare Marginis, Mare Undarum. You've got Hercules and Atlas craters. And then right over here you got Mare Frigoris, Sea of Frigidity or Sea of Cold. And then all the way over here you got this entire row that we'll zoom in on. You got, let me see, is it Ptolemaeus? And that whole row of craters. Just catching up on my lunar geology tonight. Yeah, Ptolemaeus, Alphonsus, Arzachel, Purback. And then I think we'll even be able to see Eratosthenes tonight, but it's in shadow. All right, that's a little bit quick surface tour. Let's hide this paint program. Check the chat for a moment. For just a moment. Debbie Todd, what's happening? Aloha. I was referring to, I have a Lunar Atlas application called Virtual Moon Atlas, @Loon. But also there's a crater called Atlas right above where I was sketching. So we're at the top of, basically to the right of Mare Imbrium. What's so interesting is I just noticed the structure between Mare Imbrium and Mare Tranquillitatis looks like a spider body a lot tonight, especially from a distance. San Diego says, the way I draw, it looks like a soccer ball. Maybe that's why it is the most popular sport in the entire world. I think it's somewhat related, but I feel probably because a soccer ball is built from they try and build a soccer ball in the most flexible but also the most sturdy way. And hexagon packing is nature's way, or this conjugate geometry that denotes the structure is essentially like a reduced vertice sphere or circle becomes a more structured shape because it actually has boundary layers. So I would bet that soccer balls and probably all types of sports kind of try and adopt these principles or end up adopting these principles. What's happening, Richard Garcia? Love, love, love. Welcome, welcome, welcome. NGC says George Crater. George Crater. Let me look that up real quick. That's the one I was looking for? Is that what you're saying? Find. I'm not able to see that. For some reason the search is not working right now. But let me quickly draw this spider. Because you gotta love the arachnids. And see if you notice it, right? It's at the top of the screen. You got Mare Imbrium, and then beneath that is Mare Serenitatis. Let me know if I missed anybody in the chat. I see people showing up, but I could miss you, so. Okay, paint program, turn that on. Delete all these things, and let's get this little spider drawing going. Kind of see. This is the abdomen. Sort of bug spider. But I mean, ultimately it looks like a Birkeland filament, right? Sideways on, it looks like a counterweighted symbol that I've been showing this whole time. The torus and the conjugate hypertrochoid or hyperboloid or hourglass shape or pinched tube with the Birkeland filament coaxial circuit going through the center, and then the inertial plane where matter is impinged, where plasma is impinged and creates matter that we see, and all the counter space around it. Funnily enough, counter space in space is invisible to the naked eye, but you can see patterns in nature that show exactly what counter space is. In terms of the flat areas, these mares, Maria, are counter space to these mountain ranges that are matter in a way, that are filamentary. Okay. Plain truth, I talked about that yesterday. The Earth is mirrored on the moon's surface. Like I said, I think all geology is fractal and recursive, so I don't know if you're going to find exactly all the continents on the moon, but you'll definitely see certain areas that look exactly like Italy or Florida or Japan, but I'm not sure it's exactly like a mirror surface. I have done the superimposition of those two images several times and try to look like I thought like 5 years ago that was such an incredible coincidence, like how many pieces of the moon look like the Earth's surface. However, I feel like at the scale the Earth is, which should be larger than the moon, that there's something different at play where the expansion or the size of Earth would actually yield slightly different geometric fractal patterns. Although, again, it wouldn't surprise me if it was exactly the same, but organized differently. Making swords and jamming, hell yeah. Cool, so let's play a couple more tunes here, and I'll zoom in at this north area, which is looking great. The very top, right next to the Terminator, you got Eratosthenes and the Apennine mountain range. You got Cassini Crater, Archimedes, Autolycus, and Plato. Really cool night to be seeing the moon and super crisp skies. Let's see what kind of tunes I'm going to put here. Something pretty jammy. Alright, that was a little sloppy with the title, but I was just fiddling with the scope. That track was called Space Theater. It used to be called YMI. But yeah, I like that one too. It needs like a little bit of mastering, but definitely cool vibes with the guitar. So zoomed in here with the wide shot over at Mare Imbrium. So much to look at. Mare Imbrium is just to the north, but also this area. Got Plato at the top right with Mons Pico, Mons Tenerife. You got Mare Frigoris. You got the Apennine mountain range. You got the Alpine mountain range, Montes Alpes. You got the gash that cuts through the Alpine mountain range, Valles Alpes. Then you got Cassini, the crater that's kind of at the edge of that with the two dots. I love the way I'm kind of talking about it instead of sketching. Let me just pull up my sketch program. Give me one moment. I keep forgetting. All right, so Valles Alpes, Montes Alpes, Cassini crater with two tiny craters in it. This is all Mare Imbrium. Squiggly line. Mare Imbrium. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. All right, whatever. And then this amazing feature, Archimedes crater right here. I'm having trouble because the cursor for the paint program is just not showing up in OBS anymore, so I'm kind of blindly drawing. Almost like the shape of a comet, trails coming off Archimedes crater. And then Autolycus. Autolycus. And memory does not serve me on the other one, so let me look it up. Aristillus and Autolycus. Okay, so I screwed up there. Let's try this one more time. So set the image, right. Got Archimedes, that's correct. Then right here, Aristillus crater. Look, even an elongated, kind of smoother hexagon. And to the left of that, you got Autolycus. Lycus at the end of that. Almost reminds me of lichen, like not like the plant or the bacteria or the moss, but rather lichen, like a werewolf. I feel like same sort of root, Lyc. But could be wrong. It sounds cool. And then Autolycus, I don't know why the scope is drifting pretty hardcore, but it's looking gorgeous. And you kind of see the filamentary action happening around Aristillus. Then this whole mountain range, the Apennine mountain range, is in great relief tonight, leading into Sea of Serenity. So yeah, this looks like a football play. What's going on, Cleary? Any hexagons tonight? All of these, even Archimedes, even though it's stretched, is in a way like has those corners. None of them, no craters are actually circular. It's a bold claim, but I really don't think so. Some are smoother hexagons than others. I see Dagger Spells. What's going on? How are you? And Abu Sadbeyu, what's going on? And Victor Morrison, what's happening? Rainbows and Butterflies, what's going on? Thomas Jansen, what's going on? Or Jansson, what's going on? Hope I caught everybody. All right, so this region is incredible. It almost looks like teeth. And then at the very top of this mountain range, you got Eratosthenes. I believe is how you say it. Eratosthenes. But this one has like that little kind of T3RB craft inside it, but not really. Much more so electric arc discharge. We'll zoom in there when I change the lens, but you can see that very clearly. Very cool feature at the end of the Apennine range. And then right here, getting into large mare, pentagon, hexagon, octagon. fascinating, like I said earlier, was kind of the trails coming off Archimedes, almost looking like cometary trails and filamentary actions, but also on a much larger scale, you can see the forked ridge right there. Really fascinating stuff. What else can we find? One quick one here before I move on. Look at this tiny little Birkeland filament marking right here. See it? Torus, pinched plasma, Z-pinch, core. Let's hide that and you can see it for yourselves. It's crazy. Again, looks like the abdomen of an insect, but it's two kind of lopsided hexagons in a way. Hexagon, pentagon, and it kind of just, you get diffuse edges sometimes, so it's a bit harder to see, but ultimately, if you know that shape, you can find it. Rastaman Lives says, which crater is your favorite? So tonight it's not showing, but Aristarchus is likely my favorite. Aristarchus, Eratosthenes is pretty close. It's definitely in my top 10. Posidonius. Let's see if I can't show you all Posidonius, which is on the rim of Sea of Serenity. Posidonius has so much stuff going on inside it. Right here. It's definitely a wash tonight. It's not the perfect night to see Posidonius, but right here, edge of Mare Serenitatis, you've got, it's like a flat-floored crater with tons of sinuous rills inside it, and also like secondary walls, kind of like this is like an indicator of two layers that were formed almost at the same time, and then other markings that kind of scratched into the floor of this, plus central peaks. Also, it's on the rim of a larger mare, which means it almost follows the same patterns as little craters on the rims of larger craters, but you also get large craters on the rims of mare. Same reason, geometric cohesion, fractalization of the same shape at all scales. So easy to see Sea of Serenity, Sea of Tranquility, and see this geometric structure. Like, there's a definite angle, which is so striking right there. Apple core, Birkeland filament, inertial plane. All right, time for a couple of tunes. Shout out to Aristarchus. Also, we'll check out Rima Hygienus that I was showing yesterday, these sinuous rills. And then we can also look at Ptolemaeus here. Here's another perfect example of the same sort of structure. Hexagon, pentagon, and then an elongated set right here next to it. Same thing happens with Theophilus Katharina. Same thing happens with, this is almost like a small version of Sea of Tranquility and Sea of Serenity. So if you turn this around, you'd see a similar shape. Same thing. Inverted tetrahedron, inertial plane. That's why, actually, that answers exactly why you get these two dots where they reside, right? So they reside along the inertial plane within this geometry. Birkeland filament goes through. This is why eyeballs form symmetrically. And then the nose follows the same tetrahedron that emerges from the hypertrochoid. Then it goes down, and you have nostrils that mimic these two, but they're compressed. Compression, rarefaction. Compression, mouth, rarefaction. And then compression, rarefaction. Very crude human. All right, tunage. Tunage with our lunage. This one's called Feel For You. right, just hopping in here. Let's talk about the Bible and some stories and how that might relate to astronomy and the electric universe, because it's actually quite interesting to me. Not that I'm some sort of expert on theosophy, theology, biblical studies, anything like that. Definitely not an expert by any means. However, let's talk about some ideas, right? What is an apple core? What is the apple? Tree of knowledge, right? Roots, tree, veins, nerves, bundles, right? Roots, electrical roots. Got an apple. What is an apple? An apple is this exact conjugate geometry that I've been showing, right? It's the apple core. It's the two sides, the symmetry of an apple. It's the seeds of an apple that bear the information, or that carry forward the plasma, or actually carry forward the cymatic resonance patterns that can actually create another tree from the seed of an apple. However, the flesh of an apple can't make a tree, right? Think about the relational quality of the flesh of an apple to the actual core of an apple. But then also look at the core structure of an apple, and you'll see it looks like the craters on the moon. It looks like honeycomb. It looks like sugar molecules. It looks like the basalt, not the basalt flats, but the hexagonal columning that happens in nature. Looks like the hexagons at the North Pole of Saturn and Jupiter and planets. It looks like Ptolemaeus right in front of us. An apple shape fits on top of this, and an apple is honestly the combined geometry of the torus and the hourglass shape to a T. And it also denotates, as I said, like the flesh to the seed to the flesh. Both need to exist. However, one has information, the other doesn't. Right? Does it make the flesh poor or worse than the core? In fact, the core, you can't eat the seeds of an apple, but you can really enjoy the flesh of the apple. So very simplistically, the apple is truly understood in terms of electric universe fundamentals and conjugate geometry. Then you have the snake, right? The spiraling snake, the caduceus, the twin snakes, the brotherhood of the snake, the dragon, filaments right there, right? We understand exactly why filamentary, dendritic, Lichtenberg structures are formed. They're formed on our hands, or they exist on our hands. They exist on the surface of the moon. They exist in rivers and lakes. They exist on comets and asteroids. Why do they exist? Because they're vector, directional push from a center oscillation. This oscillation comes into contact with dense plasma layers, makes a decision based on a fundamental principle of this same geometry, and diverts. Each diversion creates branching, creates movement, and this is exactly what creates these kind of winding pathways that we even call snaking pathways. So snakes, in a way, apples, and then I think there are other things about kings, and there are miracles, there are burning bushes. I mean, I'm actually simplifying. I don't mean to insult anyone. But a lot of these stories, almost everything, and I'm going to read from the chat, can be explained via either etheric plasma, a sky being different a few thousand years ago where our ancestors were seeing planets up close. They were seeing lightning bolts from other planets or comets coming by and killing people, turning people to stone, destroying, creating massive landslides and floods, stuff we see today, but 100x it. And you'll see, like, this is where all the studies and, not the studies, but all the writings and records could be alluding to these phenomena versus, humans living in the sky, or another type of human or deity or demigod being different than man, when in fact we're all in the same geometric form. All right. Wild Vicky, what's going on? Nice to see you. Welcome, Ryan and C. Wingmakers. And who else we got? If I didn't say hi to Justin and Rick, what's up? I know I've been talking directly to you, but cool. So, yeah, so those are a few observations on biblical concepts. Rick, San Diego is responding to Rick, says, evil is half of good. Without each other, neither would exist. That's essentially the relativistic standpoint. Mary says center left screen a mouse. Center left screen a mouse. All right, moving back over. Is it like a huge mouse head or a small mouse head? Because I'm seeing lots of different heads in the craters. Great to see you, Vicky. Glad you made it. Rick Dangerous says, flesh of an apple protects the seeds. No, just like a nutshell. Yeah, just like, in a way, I mean, it both protects it, but also reaches out into the ether and interacts with things, right? So that's why the apple flesh rots. It gets bruised, it gets damaged, and it is also there to protect the core. But think about it, it's so funny how the core has so much power to create a tree, but it's inedible, right? You can't, and some plants like, not plants, yeah, well, plants too, but like, you know, certain nectarine seeds are actually really not good for you. Eating cherry pits, basically pits that have the most information, the Z-pinch of the fruit, is mostly inedible. And then the outermost skin, right? We even call it a skin. That's a layer of plasma. I know a few years back there was this grape video where people were cutting a grape in half and putting it in a microwave to create plasma, grape plasma. So funny. That's what sticks with me. But it's because everything has a layer of plasma. All skin is a layer of diffuse plasma. San Diego says evil/good/neutral principles of electricity. Totally. I mean, it's a systemic. It's a system that you can use to deduce rational explanation for things around you by using this conjugate geometry. In a way, by thinking of an apple, and then thinking of the apple has the layers, right? But you can't really see them like you can an onion, for example. So if you take an onion and you superimpose it with an apple, you get a very clear understanding of all geometry in the universe. You get spirals, you get layers, you get interaction with the core, you get flesh versus core and information versus non-information. You get the relational quality between a large amount of space, right, the flesh, and a tiny amount of matter. So you get matter and dark matter explained completely within an apple core. You get chakra, you get the flow of electricity through a star, through a Birkeland filament. The part that people don't, I think that isn't as popular, right? Like you have things like Thrive and you have Nassim Haramein, and you have a lot of people who understand that this toroidal structure is the shape of our reality. They talk about it all the time on Gaia, etc. However, I don't think they talk about how through the top and bottom of these toroidal structures, toroidal/hyperboloid structures, there's a Birkeland root going through a coaxial Birkeland circuit that goes through this apple from the top to the bottom. That's what the apple stem is, and that's why you get the little filaments at the bottom of the fruit that kind of flare outwards like a star. Look at fruit and do a cross-section, and you'll see the whole universe, including human life, in every single piece of fruit, like a tomato or a nectarine or peach or pear, but very much so the apple. So take the apple, couple that with a snake, right, a dendritic structure, a filamentary structure, and then take into account this idea of kings, gods, demons, dragons, queens, princesses, wars and struggles. And you could imagine that our ancestors were looking at a nighttime sky that was far different than what we see today in terms of how volatile it was, because it was closer to the center of the Birkeland filament. Now, as life goes on, the Birkeland filament spirals outwards. So our Milky Way is a much larger spiral where it's extended outwards. Now the planets are far away from us. This makes a lot more sense, as opposed to things have not moved for billions of years. Sorry, I'm not focused too much on the moon, but now I'm moving over. You got a little atmospheric distortion, but just absolutely wild visuals. Every night we see the moon is just like incredible. Okay, Rastaman Liz says, in my interpretation, God created a heavenly kingdom and conscious plasma beings such as the serpent that rebelled. Well, I mean, I could break that down a little bit, but if you kind of read the tone of what you wrote, there's this narrative that says that somebody was at fault, right? And think about in your day-to-day life, you don't want to be told that you're wrong, and you don't want to wait, just unnecessarily so. So I feel that public cosmology, public religion is always bent a little bit on you done did wrong, buddy, and you got to repent. So that's how I feel a little bit of the language kind of takes us to that direction versus saying God created a heavenly kingdom such as conscious plasma and beings or unconscious plasma, and also a snake that is, or a serpent that is necessary for the system to work. I know it's not as poetic, but that is much more nuanced and much more accurate to what the story is saying. It's like life has a payment. The payment for life is death. The payment for being able to feel things at the tip of your fingertips is that you can cut your finger so easily, but you can also feel the most, just these very fine hairs. You can feel little droplets of water on the tip of your finger, but you can also get hurt so easily. This is the payment. And the payment is not necessarily negative if it gives us this ability, this superpower to create things and to hear things and to taste things. All right. Rick Dangerous says, plants use animals to spread seeds. That's why we can't digest them easily. There's a relationship between plants and animals that has formed. I would argue that, I would augment that by saying there's a relationship between all things at every level, in the same way that you see this relationship between plants and animals, and somehow it seems separate from humankind. Somehow mankind is a cancer on Earth that destroys things, right? We reap and we're virus on Earth, but somehow we look at animals and plants and say, no, they've got it figured out. They're better than us. But really, they're exactly the same. Like, we have a relationship with tiny bacteria that might be akin to plants and animals at a certain scale. Are we a dominant species? Sure, to a lot of things. To many other things, we're not a dominant species at all. Merry, quiet, have a great night. Great to see you here, always. Love you. Get some good groceries. I'm stocked up, and I'm really looking forward to what I'm going to eat at midnight. Cool, let's see. What do y'all think about these augmentations of our previous ideas? Like, we can take these stories that we know and then put them through this filter and kind of figure out new ways of looking at things, right? We have a moon. Why do we have a moon? Why does it look that way? These are bigger questions to me that I feel like we can solve versus looking at verses and thinking, okay, these people way back when had a much better idea on life than we do now, the so-called perceived golden age. But every age is golden. And also not. Okay. Rick Dangerous says, they talk about chaos in the universe, but I see little evidence of chaos. Even human behavior that seems unpredictable is predictable once you have the right information. Everything is ordered. Although I would argue that chaos is truly the interaction of the two, right? There's an amount of information in the world that humans can't perceive. And by means of filtering out a ton of it, we're able to see a small fraction of it that allows us to interpret it. Like I said last night, and Alan Watts said this, so I'm not original here, but he said something fascinating. He's like, and he's honestly one of the only people I've heard ever say this, and it makes perfect sense. It's like, if you could see all the stars light at the same time, the sky would be awash in light. You would never see the little specks of light. If you could hear all sounds at once, you would never hear the individual word. We hear music by sound silence, not by sound. And this is fundamental to the whole thing, is that limitations are better than no limitations, even though people don't want to really accept that fundamental truth. Rasaman Lives says, Jesus is a longer story. I've heard a lot of great stories about Jesus, but one of them that I thought was so interesting is that it was a code word for mushrooms. So they used to trade mushrooms in this village, and they started calling it Jesus when the guards came around so that they could use a code word in front of them and still talk about selling and trading mushrooms. The other one would be Jesus, if you really read it and you really kind of interpret, okay, this guy or whoever it was, whatever race, doesn't matter, right? All he came to was this fundamental understanding. What's the fundamental understanding? That this conjugate geometry of nature resides in all things on earth. Therefore, everything is in the image of what we perceive the Godhead as. You flip that language just a tiny bit into this idea of physics, into this idea of current electricity-induced cosmology, and you'll see that Jesus can easily be explained as somebody who just kind of figured out that, like, no, I'm no different than a plant or animal. That means everybody is a version of me because everybody's got limbs and eyes and everybody has a brain. And so what about this value system? Who cares? Because ultimately, fundamentally, at the core, we're all the same. So Jesus could exist, not exist, doesn't matter. His principles fundamentally fall within this construct of becoming enlightened to the fact that you are not disconnected from everything, that everything is in the same image, that you created your body, your eyes, your arms, your hair. You likely birthed yourself, and you likely will murder yourself in order to perpetuate this cycle. This idea that things happen to us is an illusion, is the true illusion. Everyone thinks it's not. Everyone says, no, it's these small, the bankers or the aliens, the Nephilim. No, it's an ancient race of reptilians. No, it's some sort of invisible god. But really, the real answer is you're doing it. You're making your eyes, you're growing your hair, you're shedding your skin. Every creature does it for themselves. And therefore, the true God is the self. The whole game is to continue to tell yourself, and this is something actually very interesting. The reason we tell ourselves that we're not God, in a way, can be related to drive and ambition and challenges, right? Creating our own challenges. And in a way, you're creating density so that you can break through density, because our systems ultimately thrive on performing this action. Therefore, adversity and challenges and difficulty and death is something that we ourselves as the Godhead create in order to have the resolution of solving these challenges, not to avoid it. And this is what's meant when people talk about it. I think improvement, enlightenment, this is what people are looking for. I know, I'm not sure what other people are looking for, but I can imagine that people are looking for this answer that either absolves them of sin or absolves them of responsibility. But the real answer is you have to sin in order to exist, and you're responsible for all of it, both good and bad. Both those things most people don't ever want to hear or will not really ever believe. I'm saying it out loud because I know for a fact that many people will hear these exact words. It will make perfect sense to them, and they'll still pretend that it's not the truth. Simply based on this geometry, this rule of counter space versus space means that there's a lot of flesh, but then there's a little bit of core. A little bit of core is a stream here with 30 people talking about, what I think is the core, is sitting here talking about what is really like answers to the big questions, very simply. And then further than answering those big questions, we're breaking through those boundaries and answering new questions and new layers, stuff that scientists can't touch and won't touch because they're bound to funding, they're bound to their egos, or any number of things, even if they understood this. All right, just reading a bit more of the chat here. Rasaman Live says, you have to know about the divine council and the heavenly host. Golden age like Atlantis. So quickly, divine council and heavenly host, if they were called the DMV and the something district, you wouldn't give two craps about it. I think it's the language of theology and theosophy and religion is so purple and so pompous in a way, and maybe not badly pompous, just it's full of itself in a way that makes you feel so either inferior, or if you buy into it, then better than other people because of the language, right? That the divine council, right? The divine council just means a group of humans. to some degree, or a group of entities that that are geometrically fundamentally similar to humans. And the heavenly host, again, the concept of heaven is what makes that phrase or the set of words actually meaningful. The idea, the physical manifestation of heaven is either what you perceive it to be or illusionary, right? People imagine heaven, and some people know that we live in both heaven and hell simultaneously, which is space and counter space. And I don't mean to insult anyone here, by the way, just so please don't take what I say like I'm telling you how to live. Let me quickly zoom out a bit because I feel like I want to see the rest of the moon. Ooh-wee, amazing. Amazing. NGC says, to me, God is a powerful, almighty cat. I would be perfectly fine with that. Chris Kelly, what's up? Thanks for the thumbs. Nice to see you. Golden Age like Atlantis? No, Golden Age for me is more like gold is a vibrational frequency, and there's an interpretation of what that means. So many people think that it refers back to a time that wasn't here. In contemporary culture, we have this phrase, the grass is always greener. That, to me, is akin to the idea of the Golden Age, where people think that there's something else and something other than the situation, the moment that you're in right now, that you need to somehow get to, right? And this is one of those real lessons that people learn, where you are is where you're supposed to be. I think for me, I've noticed that. Like home is where the heart is, or the true master really takes all the skills with them. There's no need to be any particular place because wherever you are is where you're at. Many people don't buy into that. I think it's really simple, and it answers like a much grander question in a very simple and calm way. So, Golden Age is perspective. Don't need to get anywhere or go back to anywhere, because there is no anywhere else except for the moment that we're perceiving. Even though I would argue that like we can preserve the cymatic pattern information of what we perceive as the past with us perpetually, right? So we're taking the past information with us, but the perception is the additive nature of the oscillation at the Z-pinch coupled with the plasma layers collectively that exist around it. Wherever you go, there you are. We're back in the good old days. Yeah, great. Thank you. Cleary says, geometry means earth measure. I dig that. I think I haven't seen that one before, but I dig it. All right. I think I caught up on all the comments. Let's play some music. I'm going to get a drink real quick. We got gorgeous waxing gibbous moon, 68.3% illuminated. Starting to come down. I think it's like 40 degrees altitude for me. 10:46 p.m. Eastern. Florida, warm in the fall. Searching here for some tunage. Let's do some broken toy box here. Some instrumental guitars. All right, that was a little Game of Life from the Calling My Mind album. So yeah, it's just really a matter of, it's not really the cost. Like I said, it's like about $50 per album, and you pay that annually, right? So I have 3 albums up on Spotify and iTunes. It's kind of across the board. You put it up and it goes to all the different platforms. The thing about actually creating it is more so you need high resolution AIFF files that are well mastered to kind of really put it together. And that's where I've failed in terms of what I do is I'll actually just write a bunch of stuff, come play it on the show, and then I'll think, oh, at some point I'll go back and master this and just create the high-res file and go back and make the album, and I end up just writing some more stuff the next time. So it's mostly distraction and laziness, but at some point I'll get enough time and energy or focus to actually add a couple more albums up there. I definitely have a few in mind that are just ready to go. Just need to actually export them and put it all together. So appreciate everybody's patience. I know I've been saying it for like 3 years, but y'all can hear all the new stuff if you listen to this last year's worth of shows. And usually the live stuff is the most fun. The show from a couple of weeks ago is so much fun. And we'll do some more live stuff once the full moon comes around. Let me know if you have any more questions. I'm happy to talk more about electric universe, plasma, consciousness, religion, conspiracies, etc. But what I was thinking, actually, now that I got rid of the focal reducer, I got the cam direct to scope, Sony a6 V and the Nexstar 8. It's looking really sharp. Let's zoom into this region up at Mare Imbrium and look at Archimedes up close. Archimedes! And Valles Alpes, Montes Tenerife, Plato, all these are super cool, incredible relief tonight. By relief, I mean the angle of the shadows against the mountains, not relaxation. But that too. Rastaman lives. You go get some food. Have a good one as well. Take care. San Diego, where do y'all Oh, San Diego, you left me Lake Havasu. Is that right? Havasu. Maybe I'll get it right this time. All right, so tunage and then zoomage. So I'm going to pull up some stuff from a little bit longer ago. Y'all into some rock or some... Actually, let's play stuff from the Captain of the Stars album. This album actually does exist. If you go check out TakeBackSpace Captain of the Stars on your favorite platform, you'll be able to listen and buy this album. And if y'all don't know, you can also go to Bandcamp and pick up music as well. That's the link. Dig your sound, kid. Thanks. I appreciate that. I said it right this time. Awesome. All right, going to go through a few songs from the Captain of the Stars record. It starts with Anecdote and Rid Your Mind, but maybe... Yeah, let's just do Captain of the Stars album from the top and see where we end up. Anecdote to kick it off.
You're my friend now, that's a code of arms. It's the end, so let's just play the odds. You're my friend now, that's a code of arms. Sing along to the end, you know, baby. Where your friends at, take it in the eye. Along to the end, something. She called a friend now, that's a call to arms. Sing along to the end, something. Call your friend, so
Alright, y'all. Let's talk a little bit about these craters. Red Rum, take care, brother. Nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by. I'm going to try and stream again tomorrow, like I said, but we'll see. Over here, this is Mare Imbrium, like I was showing earlier. But we got Aristillus, Autolycus, and Cassini in view. Cassini is this one with the two little craters inside it. And what's so interesting and very simply is that you can see it even without me drawing. You can see these angles that show hexagonal, octagonal, pentagonal forms. You can see it around Cassini, which at a distance you really can't tell because it's so diffuse and it looks like an ellipse. And you could definitely confuse this with a circular crater, but I'm going to draw it anyway, just because I can. But you can make it out now that you've seen it, that like this angle right here. I really got to do better tracking next time. Usually I'll track it with Jupiter and Saturn, but I just went for solar system tracking and it's sloppy tonight. It is sloppy. But either way, draw. You can see it. Angles beneath it, angles to the side. Let's quickly take a look. You can see the same thing with Aristillus right here. At the bottom, hexagonal, looks like a chin of a human being. At the center, you got residual electric discharge arcing at the center, the same place the Z-pinch would be. You have the filaments coming outwards and surrounding this region. And then up here to the left, you got Archimedes, really incredible crater, which actually is one of the smoother ones. This one, you'd be forgiven to think that this is actually circular, but ultimately you can kind of make out the angles here, but they're there. Right there, there, and there. And at the top, kind of there, there. If you really had a high-res photo or it wasn't moving so badly, we could make it out. But yes, some of them are diffuse, but almost all craters hexagonal. Not almost. I keep saying almost. I think all of them are hexagonal. Like bubbles in a sink. Now, that's not to say that there aren't certain bubbles in a sink that actually retain their spherosity or circularness. So therefore, there could be craters, I think, possibly. Maybe not craters on the moon, because ultimately craters in geology, you would have packing. You could never have like a really perfectly circular thing by itself. Ultimately would come up against boundary layers within the earth, the dense layer of earth or soil, and it would create these hexagons, even at the largest scales. I think you would have, like in space, right? We have spherical planets. This is a perfect example of planets are not necessarily hexagonal. They have a lot of tiny flat surfaces connected, and ultimately enough vertices that they look smooth from a distance. Like when we see the moon right here, it's very smooth on the edge. But if you zoom in, you're going to get all these little segments that create the smoothness. Whereas geology you have to pack all the information into one place, therefore you're going to get a lot more hexagons, I believe. Just moving here a little bit more. This is, like I said, the 8-inch two times magnification with camera direct to scope. So it's really, really awesome. I mean, the 11 is incredible, but the 8 is definitely doing an outstanding job. Again, for under $2,000, you can get this view for yourselves. All right, check this incredible structure out. Talk about sharp hexagons. And where am I? I want to say that I know, but is it Ptolemais? Yes, it's near Ptolemais. So it's, is it Arzachel? Let's see. Yo, Shockwave, what's happening? But the discharges are small. Oh, talking about there. All right. Good to see you, man. How's it going, Rick? Stereogenic, I see you in there as well. There's no weather system on the moon to cause erosion over time. There's solar radiation and solar so-called wind, which creates vibrations on the surface and different types of levels of elements and molecules that ultimately, what we call erosion, I think, is this removal of electron charge from certain types of elements. And there's decay, there's electrostatic discharge, there's excitement of gases like xenon, argon, krypton, and other gases that exist on the moon's surface. All of these contribute to an erosive process. It's stripping away little bits of the moon. As well, like the moon probably has gotten to a point where, I mean, what is rock, right? It's a thick membrane of plasma that has calcified, that has crystallized. So the moon has gotten to a phase, or at least the surface of the moon that we see is crystalline, calcified version of what it used to be, which might have been more viscous and liquidy. Again, take everything I say kind of from my own interpretation. Not saying that I'm right, just saying that's what I think. So all throughout, hexagons upon hexagons, ultimately forming honeycomb patterns. Why? Because you have circles growing outwards, meeting other circles, finding boundary layers, creating these shapes. How do they move? Why do they vibrate in those ways? Because of this conjugate geometry. It's found throughout. If you skip through my videos, you'll see that I draw this shape over all parts of the moon, planets, stars, and it works every single time without fail. You can draw this Birkeland filament in the center, inertial plane. Sometimes it curves in a different way, right? Like, whoops. You'll get, that's where the filaments actually end up leaving the center point or off-center point of crater floors is based on this impingement of counter space against space, or counter space against what we perceive as the impingement of counter space upon the vibrational lattice that is formed when it emanates from the center point. So as this Birkeland filament comes across the surface of the moon, it actually impinges at this point and kind of pushes these boundary layers to form along this structure. Or it doesn't push, it actually pushes, both pushes and pulls, because the system is not one way, it is doing both things at once. So I'm going to hide this structure, and then let's look at some more features. You'll see if you notice that same structure throughout. Again, the solar wind, also is a surface level understanding, right? Wind, what is wind? Wind, what are currents? Electrical current flow. So we're in a plasma sheath of the sun, and the moon is also in that plasma sheath. So the sun is constantly interacting with Earth, the planets, and the moon in massive ways, not just a little bit, but massive ways, powering them from the outside with not only information in terms of what we perceive as consciousness, planetary consciousness, but memory, and also power in order for the moon to retain its orbit, right? Like, these things they're not just floating in empty space. This is the misconception, I think. And there are no, tendrils reaching through nothingness. The tendrils are part of an inherent structure of layered and packed plasma bubbles. Buddy Dougherty from the Electric View has incredible images of this exact structure, and it absolutely looks correct. Shockwave is saying the moon has no atmosphere, so electric discharge happens differently than on Earth for the most part. And the smaller discharges that happen today work in a different way to a massive arc. I don't know if I agree about the atmosphere. I think what we call atmosphere is also limited understanding. And atomos is, even the word atom is kind of related to this concept of splitting in half or indivisible, actually. Atomos, the most indivisible piece. And a sphere is, geometric structure. So an atmosphere, I think, every single sphere, every single point in space has plasma layers. You could call them an ionosphere, magnetosphere, atmosphere. But really what it just is trying to imply is that all these objects, every single object has these layers. So I think the moon does have a type of atmosphere. It doesn't have no atmosphere. And the moon does have magnetism. It doesn't have very little magnetism. It has magnetism that it needs, right? I think that, again, I mentioned earlier, this kind of constant negative reinforcement of concepts. Oh, it's just that. Oh, it's only that. And I don't mean Shockwave in particular, I just mean in general. The conversation always, to me, seems like it's always poo-pooing a topic or denigrating the person saying something, or saying, oh, it's just that. It's just math. Oh, it's just the Big Bang, which is just idiotic to me. It basically ruins the conversation, and it makes things not fun to talk about. And to me, that type of thinking is just, see, I'm about to do it. That type of thinking is just so stupid. But I don't know. I tend to try and articulate things from a positive vantage point, because I think it's more original and more fun, and in a way more difficult to really push yourself to phrasing things like the moon, and I mean, let's say specifically what I'm saying. Specifically, I'm talking about how people say the moon only has a thin layer. Who cares if it's less or more than it's the competitive nature. Like the moon is competing with Earth. It's not. It has an atmosphere. Does it not have? Does it have as much of an atmosphere as Earth? Who cares, right? Why does it have to be competitive? So for me, I think it's actually about reframing things that will allow us to understand things a little bit better. Yeah, Ellie Wynn says polarization. Yep. Chakra is saying the moon does not have a magnetic field. It's inside our magnetic field. The magnetism on the moon is due to the Thunderbolts discharges that made permanent magnets. I mean, it's semantics, or it's dicing it into like having an opinion about it, and we've talked about it before, but it's not that I disagree. I think it's just a way of interpreting it. You're saying the moon does not have a magnetic field, but it's inside Earth's magnetic field or the sun's magnetic field. But to me, there is no separation, right? If you're in the magnetic field in the sheath of the sun, and you're also within the magnetic field of the Earth, thereby magnetism is induced on the moon. So to say in and of itself it doesn't have its own core or its own source of magnetism can be debated, I think. In fact, if you look at the Grail missions, I mean, I'm not trying to like flex, I'm just saying that there is remnant magnetism on the moon. So to say that the moon isn't magnetic presupposes, sets up a premise whereby everything you hear after that comes with the baggage that the moon doesn't have magnetism. So if you hear right after that the moon does have remnant magnetism, you're at odds with that concept. You're not able to really throw your weight behind it, because you're in a dilemma already within the first sentence. However, you don't even need to say that the moon doesn't have a magnetic field, because all you have to say is the moon is within the magnetic field of the Earth. And then ask a question, right? But to immediately add this kind of arbitrary, it's like making a judgment. It's basically judging things without really allowing things to speak for themselves. Shockwave is saying the moon is hollow. Now that is something I definitely think is true. I know it's also a radical idea, but I think all planets, moons, stars are akin to shells with a core and what we like the flesh of an apple, right? That flesh in space and maybe in planets, maybe in the moon, for example, or maybe in the Earth, is more diffuse matter than solid, liquid, metal matter that we can imagine. So therefore, maybe Jupiter, to some degree, it has a very dense core, and then this fleshy part, and then the surface that we see with all the storms and those layers. Same thing with the moon. We could see the crust of the moon right now, the calcified crystalline layer, but the moon could also have like an old core that is not as active, but in between the core and the outer shell of the moon, you could have, let's say, I don't know, what is it? Maybe 100 miles of diffuse materials, maybe not like rock solid, maybe more like spongy, for example. Stereogenic says rings like a bell. Rings like a bell comes from a lander during the Apollo missions, where they mentioned that when they hit the moon or landed on the moon, it rang like a bell for hours. For me, that just is part that reinforces this idea that not only planets, but creatures, tables, rocks, stones, Rick is going to disagree with me, but rocks, stones, everything, absolutely everything that exists in our reality, when you hit it or tap it, resonates, and therefore it is some form of consciousness. So the moon ringing like a bell, whether it's hollow, whether it's resonating, whether they landed on it or not, just ultimately kind of still reinforces this idea that the moon is conscious, is alive, and reacts to things. NGC says, if there was no moon, there would be no TakeBackSpace show to listen to. Damn, that would be a real dilemma. Stereogenic says, people that say it's just that, it's just this, they don't want to think and are mentally lazy. Like, I wasn't going to say it, but no, I'm kidding. Ultimately, I think it's just habits. I don't want to like pick on people who use that, because I know that I've definitely used that in my life to either denigrate or belittle somebody's scientific opinion because I thought I knew better, because I was just regurgitating what I heard on science shows in my 20s. And, you know, that's years ago. And now what I try and do is really have some sort of visual corroborative evidence for almost everything that I talk about. For example, when I talk even about the moon's surface and magnetism and glowing argon gases and all this stuff, we're seeing it right here. Like on Proclus, you see radiant, bright white spots on the moon. It would make sense that gases like neon in a bulb would glow. Therefore, if you had something like these gases on the surface of the moon, either being expelled or just existing diffusely and then interacting with solar current, they would get excited and they would glow like a light bulb. That to me is that type of deductive logic reasoning that you can really use the electric universe for. Then you can look at the Mare Crisium in the bottom right corner and say, wow, that I've always heard that moon craters and moon mares are circular, but that really looks hexagonal to me. Like, what's going on there? And then you look at this conjugate geometry, this apple core with the onion skins, and you're like, wow, I can draw this shape on top of these craters. Then you look at bubbles, and you look at hexagons, you look at honeycomb, molecules, basalt flats, you name it, language, culture, cities, tiny microbes, and you'll find these hexagons. And to me, there are so many conspiracies out there, but think about it, nobody's asking, like, why are craters on the moon shaped a certain way? Like, very basic questions. NGC, sorry about no planets tonight because I got on pretty late. Saturn Jupes were already gone. Shockwave says, the moon does not have a plasmoid like the Earth's active core, so no magnetic field, only spots of magnetism. I mean, I think there must be a residual place where that plasmoid existed. Has to be. The moon must have some sort of core. If it's not as active as it used to be, maybe I can agree with that. But there's no reason for it to not be there at all, like, so the moon being hollow with no center point, because it doesn't occur in any type of nature. Ultimately, if you let an apple rot, the seeds will ultimately shrivel and waste away into dust, but they'll be there. So the moon, I think, does the same sort of thing. Whoops, lost our moon for a second. All right. So let us listen to some tunes for a little bit. More of Captain of the Stars album, playing Golden over here. 11:26, running for another, 20 minutes or so. I'm getting pretty hungry for my midnight snack. Thanks everybody for hanging out tonight on this lovely November 23rd Monday, Moon Day. And yeah, damn, my tracking is going crazy. Okay, come back.
Watch you crawling down my chimney. I don't understand your clothes. Enemies like Easter bunnies. Give you love and a common peace. Feel your pain, it's part of me. I know you think that this is bodies, but I'm amazed by the words from the lips. I hear your name from a common peace. It's insane that you're part of me. Never lift from my iron wrists, it's as if everybody is the same bloody. Feel insane and I yearn for relief. Maybe one day you'll summon me. I am made of the will of somebody someday, buddy. We'll get the slip. Here in space now we come in peace. Singing things that you cannot believe. Ready to trip on the drift. We can live to the view, cause I love to give you. We are the space race, we are the moonwalk. We are the franchise, we are the sequel. We are the ether, how are we still here? For your place along the space race.
body.
Je t'attends, mon amour, à cette tuelle, ainsi l'amour que la même semaine, achetant la plus humaine, avec mon ensemble. Je suis la même, tout en avant, et chaque jour, je t'attends, mon amour, avec les mecs sans arriver. Et c'est mon amour magnétique, c'est l'amour magnétique, c'est mon amour magnifique.
All right. That was some Will-Powered, and I think this is the first time I've noticed this. No joke. This is right next to Eratosthenes and the edge of the Apennine mountain range, and I know I've seen this feature before, but look at how specifically like a twisted plasma filament this looks. Tell me if y'all see this thing. It's just incredible. It's in good relief tonight, and yeah, it's just like those handles in the middle and the twisting lightning bolts at the end, and right, it's right in the middle of a pentagon. I'm going to hang on this for one more moment, pick some couple more songs here, but let me know if you see it. It's just like that's a twisted lightning bolt, like Zeus's thunderbolt, or any number of ancient artifacts are shaped this way. And look at what's happening on the left, like a lot of incredible arrows and symmetry going on. Just unbelievable. I mean, I've definitely noticed it before, but wow, specifically tonight, looking really good. What about some dream fields here?
So high in your sleep. Don't treat me so cruel. I've been waiting on the porch for days. Don't treat me like you're cool. I've been waiting on the sea for years. I've been waiting for the secret all along. And you know what brings it? Don't you know what soul can sing? Singing about this dream so long for you. I've been dreaming about the song. So long for you. I've been singing about the song. So long for you. I've been dreaming about the one with you. I've been singing about this dream. So long for you. Till I see the color of your eyes reflected in the picture I made for you.
to myself in a dream, I tell ya. Locked doors, no flaws in this fantasy. Take the night, cause everything's meant for your pleasure. You found a home, you found your map, you found your treasure. When you play, your mind, your face, the needlessness to rest. Already waits, love's the case. No story saved, just the corner of the page. All right, everyone. So I'm going to wind it down over here. 12:08 a.m. Rolling into Tuesday. Smoking hot. Got an amazing night of viewing the moon. All sorts of cool features. Stuff that I didn't notice before. Things that I'm focused in on this time. Talking about these structures. You can see it now very clearly. Lunar craters are mostly hexagonal, pentagonal, octagonal. They usually have a shared boundary layer. They form along these very distinct geometric pathways over and over at every scale. You can see it on the moon, and you can see it on your hand, and you can see it in all sorts of different places and relate it by yourself without anybody else. Playing some songs here for y'all, stuff that I enjoy playing and feeling tonight. And thanks to everybody for the kind comments about the music. I really appreciate that. So, getting the palm trees in view now. You can see it's already blurring, so I'm going to let the moon just drift. 2.5 hours of intense and fun space stuff yet again. I'll try and be back again tomorrow, if not the night after. Wishing you all have a great Thanksgiving week, or whatever you're celebrating. I'm definitely not having turkey, but I will take a day to rest and appreciate things. Let's do some Dreamboat. This song is fun.
You really can't wait. Only for it's inside their trouble. They really care for you. Only for it's inside they want no trouble.
right, y'all. Hope you have a great rest of your night and a great day tomorrow. That's it for this session. Stay wise, stay brave, and share the stream with somebody who might like it. And like I wrote in the chat, please leave me a comment on your favorite moment or track from tonight. And also leave me a question about Electric Universe or bring it next time so we can chat about it. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. See you on the next trip. And I'm out. Peace.